and we're bringing to you Trinidad and Tobago's leading medical professionals to discuss the issues that affect you and your family. From prevention and treatment to wellness and the latest medical technology. Get trusted advice, ask your questions, and stay informed. We also have an exciting new addition to the WhatsApp Doc family, our very own fitness instructor, Elena, who will provide easy, practical exercises you can implement in your daily routine. So don't miss WhatsApp Doc, Season 5, only on WESN, the content capital. Because when it comes to your health, knowledge is the best medicine.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man
is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
WESN.
I swear, just the other day, I was only concerned about the degree by which the sun was basically beating me down every time I left an air-conditioned room, because just having a roof over your head is not necessarily protection from the heat. And now, I can't remember how long it's been since we have last been this overcast with such frequency. And I have to admit, I do like it. I really hope I'm here enjoying the overcast skies, the cooling rains, and then somewhere in the country floods. I really hope that doesn't happen. It really put a damper on my mood, because I do love it when it is overcast. This is my favorite kind of morning, even though it makes me not really want to leave my bed. It really is hard, right? When you have a morning like this, it's darker than normal, it's a lot cooler than normal, and you expect the rest of the day into the late morning lunchtime to remain nice and cool and cozy, and then you have to get out of your bed and go talk to the people. Talk to Talking Point Nation, because this is Talking Point on WSN, the content capital. I'm Sean Michael Small, and it is a nice morning, but like I said, not everything's for free, so I hope we don't have too much heavy rains in the wrong places, because we have yet to have a government that could figure out, hey, maybe if we make new reservoirs lower than flood-prone areas, near flood-prone areas, we might actually be able to prevent some of these floods and increase our water supply. I don't know how easy it is. I'm not a civil engineer, but I have yet to even hear such an obvious solution being discussed by the relevant authorities in charge. Maybe it's not workable, but this is one of those things where, as you're speaking about your flood mitigation, one of the ways that you could show that you actually know what you're doing is to discuss measures that have been looked at and cannot be executed for whatever practical reason or another. Now, before we have our media, not media ambassador, he's a former media ambassador, before our guest comes in today, because there are quite a few national security topics still to get through. Don't mind that the state of emergency is working, but we still have quite a few national security topics to get to. In fact, there are some that we didn't even plan to speak about, so I'll speak about them now in case we don't necessarily have time to later. One of the things is that the TTPS has apparently admitted that for the year there are 210 home invasions. Now, this is a very tricky stat. The police point out such a stat was never compiled before. Similar crimes were classified under different names. And I don't know how easy it is to retroactively go back and try to figure it out. So here's the thing though, because I do believe in April 19th, the minister reported there were 69 home invasions. I have no idea if he decided to report it at that time because of the symbolism by the number that it reached at the moment. Maybe it, anyway, let me not say that. So April the 19th, there was 70. And now we're in August the 21st. 4 months later, there are 210. That's a bit concerning for me, given the fact that the minister's claim was that the home invasion law was working. And I guess this is why I asked, all right, how? Why do you say that? What do you mean it's working? Because I don't know. In theory, I'm not sure when they started counting, but in theory, the first 4 months they had 69 home invasions, and then the last 4 months they had something like 140 home invasions. That is literally double if the time frames are correct. If the time periods are accurate. If there really were 70 in 4 months and then 140 basically in the next 4 months that came after that, that standing ground legislation really is working, guys. I mean, we could chalk it up to all the winning the country is winning thanks to the government. We're so winning. We're so winning. Because when UNC wins, you know everybody wins. All this winning all of the money right out of your pockets through taxes and fines. I have to admit, I do sound like a hater, but in my defense, they make it so easy. The jokes write themselves. Not that I'm saying I'm a great joke writer, but it is what it is, right? So one of the other things that we've spoken about before, but it's come up again in the news. I do find the timing of this interesting. However, it's technically still a live issue. And of course, there was a situation where the opposition tried to say that the police posts are like another way to try to get ZOSO passed. And Independent Senator Marlene Axe is pointing out, well, no, you can't really say that. And for the most part, I believe she's correct. I do think that most attempts to say that these police posts are trying to backdoor a ZOSO type scenario it's a stretch. It is a stretch because you have to do too much calculations, right? Too much speculations to get there. Now, I will say this, that technically doesn't mean that it can't be true. Just that without sufficient evidence, it's premature to make that claim because Senator Axe points out, look, one of the main things with regards to ZOSO is the specific legislative powers or authority that would have been granted over those areas, as opposed to just having a police post that is there for presence in certain areas, right? And I think this is one of the other things. I believe ZOSOs would have been obviously targeting hotspots, whereas the police posts might be targeting not so much the hotspots themselves, maybe some, but they will be targeting areas where they perceive a certain degree of vulnerability and frequency of presence by the public, right? So there's a lot of members of the public here. A lot of members of the public might move through an area, right? Like the Grand Bazaar intersection or Etihad grounds or what have you. And they want a presence to safeguard those areas and others that whatever the criteria is, they technically didn't give us a criteria. So it's not exactly the same. But to be fair to the opposition, their criticism is a little bit premature, because I think you're asking the public to kind of have to forecast too much, to calculate too much ahead in advance without enough evidence. But Minister Sage said this. So the first part of the quote is not pertinent. It's the last part of the quote, but I'm going to read the whole thing because of the first part is the setup. Central Trinidad might be number one. There was a time when bodies were dropping daily in Lavantil. When's the last you heard that? That's because of effective ZOSO operations being used for the last 10 years. Now we're seeking to have it clothed with the respectability of law. What do you mean, ZOSO legislation is being used in the last 10 years? Now, this could have been a dig at the previous administration. The problem, of course, is, I don't know if he necessarily, because he said the last 10 years. I don't know if he necessarily thought it out. And now he said this when the ZOSO bill was in the House, I believe, right? And he's basically claiming that police, and I did point this out, at least partially, that police were operating without the respectability of law because apparently they had effective ZOSO operations without legislation to give them heightened powers. So exactly what does he mean? Did the police go out of bounds? Because I do believe he tried to say for the last 10 years, meaning the PNM was doing this, PNM was doing that. The implication is that, according to him, government controls the police service far more than they would like to admit. So, according to Minister Sturge, because of the implications of what he said, he is implying the PNM. Because I'm not assuming he's throwing the TTPS under the bus. I don't think he's saying that the men and women in TTPS were acting illegally, but he's potentially trying to say that the opposition was handling crime wrongly. But that implies a certain degree of control over the police that he thinks governments have. And we've at times seen certain Freudian slips that suggest that the government does exercise a degree of control over the TPS that they will publicly deny. I mean, let's not forget, no minister could call for a PDO, except apparently the commissioner arrested people and he wasn't even aware of certain pieces of intelligence one would have assumed would have led to him seeking to detain the individuals with regards to the grand conspiracy to kill the Prime Minister, now centered around Star Sabga. So he is technically claiming to the public by his statements, I don't know if this recording is authentic. Now here's the best part. If they have no other piece of intelligence, we don't know, we're probably not going to know anytime soon, if ever. Then what was the basis of him arresting these people in the first place? Unless you want to tell me that a member of cabinet, maybe not Roger Alexander, a member of a cabinet, there are technically two members of cabinet who are not merely ministers. But it's semantics. But you know, I won't put it past. Let me not finish that sentence. So, we have a situation, and this situation arguably was set up from the previous administration, to be fair. But we have a situation where I think they handled the communications properly and have self-implied, self-incriminated that, hey, we're not as independent as we claim to be when we need to defend ourselves from certain political accusations. I'm not saying that's the truth. I'm saying they set themselves up to be perceived that way. And Minister Sturge, in a past statement, is also setting himself up to perceive things that way. But here's the point, though. Minister Sturge has basically identified the fact that heavy-handed police action has happened before. And heavy-handed police action, if it happened before, Because again, if we want to be reasonable, the police are independent. Heavy-handed police action probably still technically within the realms of the law. However, I don't know what else. Maybe he's using his knowledge as a defense attorney when he made that statement. Just saying. Politicians say the darndest things when you really think about it, right? It's not hard to think that if, according to Stage, you could have effective ZOSO operations, it's just not clothed within the respectability of the law. When you have joint army police posts now, and you have concerns about rising levels of home invasions, because crime is down, the SOE is working, crime is down, but home invasions are somehow rising. Well, who knows? Politicians might be tempted to ask the police to do effective ZOSO operations even when it's not clothed with the respectability of the law. Now, this is where I need to point out, if you have not necessarily figured out where I'm going with this, the nuance of this whole debate. Because Dr. Marlene is absolutely correct. The two situations are technically not the same. And officially, you don't really get a lot of mileage trying to compare it. In fact, you potentially risk derailing the public support on the issue, because the public is not necessarily going to want to. Not that they can't, not that the public isn't sensitive, but they're not necessarily going to want to connect the dots. Because there's a lot of implication with regards to what has been said by members of cabinet, particularly in national security, in the past, that implies that the opposition is not totally unfounded with regards to their concerns. It's not totally impossible. It's not totally out of left field. There might be something to it. It's just we don't fully know. And what happens is, Dr. Atz, she is speaking professionally in what should be. And what the opposition is potentially implying is it's not supposed to be this way. That doesn't mean it can't. Now, on some level, that could also be the opposition indirectly admitting, yeah, we know sometimes funny business happens in politics. So maybe they've done similar to the same scale, to a smaller scale. I don't know. Some people might then want to push back against that. Technically, while somewhat pertinent, it would be besides the point in this case. And in this case, it is a question on what is the government's intentions. It's very difficult to judge people via intentions. You can only judge them by their actions and their statements, right? Yes, you might think you know what the intentions are, and sometimes that is true. But technically speaking, you don't know, right? You don't know. Hell, there's a subsection of the population, they don't know what their own intentions are half the time when they say or do anything. You don't know for sure what someone else's intentions are. You might have a good idea, you might have a reasonable speculation, you might calculate them so accurately that you could predict everything that they do, but technically you don't know. One of the things with the government, however, because as Karen would always say, past behavior is a good indicator of future behavior. One of the interesting things about the government is when it comes to national security, they seem to be quite happy taking shortcuts. In fact, with several things, they seem to be quite happy taking shortcuts. I'm not saying the PNM didn't take shortcuts. They just, if they did, probably disguised it better. So, basically, state of emergency, zones of special operations, these were ways to kind of bypass the limitations in the criminal justice legislation, bypass the deficiencies. But then also, you are circumventing certain things, like, I don't know, having to get enough evidence to charge people. And on some level, we have operated like this far too much. Because before it was detention orders, there were too many people in remand because the criminal justice system was taking too long. And in many ways, now, I don't doubt you have like a subsystem within the criminal justice system where the remand is like a pseudo punishment replacement alternative, which effectively gets the criminals off the streets because you had significant arrests, significant suspects, gang leaders and the like, who were then taken to the barracks because they didn't want certain gang leaders communicating with the outside world. They were technically, from what I understand, on remand. And that's why their conditions were not like a convicted criminals. It was better because they weren't technically convicted yet. It put the situation in a very unbalanced, unnatural, and untenable state for the long run. So we're not necessarily, we don't have a working criminal justice system. I have said this before the government. To be fair to them, the problem exists. The problem exists. Their solution, however, is trying to seemingly take the easy way out at each turn, right? So when you have a police shooting that angers the public, you don't then put things in place for greater transparency so you don't experience the public's anger in the future if there's another future incident. No, you double down on the lack of transparency if you're Roger Alexander. And you double down on the lack of transparency if you're the commissioner. Because it's too hard to actually be transparent and have great plans and to innovate. No, let's just get an SOE where we just suspend your rights and we could detain you. Right? Because everyone thinks that Christopher Samaru was really going to go on a rampage. Because he has grief. Well, it's similar to the Hadids. They have means. We need to be careful that they have means. All of a sudden, the means don't matter for the Hadids. Right? Star Sabga, apparently she has much greater means. 70-year-old woman. Hopefully she doesn't die technically in custody. Then they might try to say, no, well, she wasn't in custody, she was house arrest. You're restricting her visitors. Just saying, you're restricting her movements. They have means. Christopher Samaru has grief. Heaven forbid, there are uncountable number of people in the country technically that have enough means and or grief to be motivated by to do something stupid. Are we going to lock up everybody? Oh my gosh, a businessman got an unfair ticket. He might be upset with the police. Are we going to lock him up too? I mean, how many parents show outright hatred for the police after what the police did to their children? And a lot of the time, we understand these were criminals that were killed. But of course, the parents, there are some parents, they understand the truth. Some parents, they want to deny the truth, even with the death of their boy, and express their anger to the police. Are we going to lock all of them up too? Mr. Samaru, it's not as though he had some extra special level of means. Or was it that he needed to be silenced? Let's stop talking about his son's death. We can't have him displaying his grief to the public. It makes us look too bad. You see, some members of the TTPS would have understood that. Would have understood that it looks as though you're persecuting and silencing this man. It doesn't matter if that is what your intent is. What did I say? We can't judge other people's intent. We don't know what it is. Like how you know the sky is blue and how you know that grass, when watered, is green. You don't know what intent is. You believe you know, you think you know, you think your calculations on what it is correct, but you don't know for a fact. You can't take a ruler and measure his intentions out. Or measure yours. So that's what it can look like and probably does to many members of the public. Here you have someone expressing his grief at the death of his son. Not just the death of his son. He saw his son put his hands in the air to surrender and then get shot. Almost like an execution. How would you feel if that happened to your boy? And then tell me that in your grief, you won't say things out of anger and sadness and sorrow that you don't necessarily mean. Tell me you've never seen anyone lash out in such heightened emotions, but not in a permanent way. But no one ever accused the TTPS executive at being good at their job. So, Dr. Atz is technically correct. And it's important that we heed her words, because you can't just, you have to be able, if you want the hypothesis to stick the landing, you have to be able to account for what Dr. Atz is saying, because it is reasonable and it is true. And it is the most important basic step. If you want to say that this is going to be Zosos all over again, you then have to bridge the gap. But the capacity is there, the potential is there, because the mindset, by everything we have seen out of this government, is technically there. This is the interesting thing. The mindset of the PNM, from the economy to national security, was essentially, don't rock the boat, don't do anything that's going to risk anything, right? Be very careful with any change you make. That's what they did. They did not want to do any significant changes. That's why the budget was more or less the same every year. And then I don't think they wanted to shut down Petrotrin, but once they thought they had to, they were more than happy to take a pound of flesh out of the OWTU and shut down the refinery. That was stupid, I will admit, but I don't think they started off year one, day one, with that goal in mind, because they knew it would have been unpopular. And when they had to raise the price of gas, they did it. They didn't just let the floodwaters gush out. They had a limit. They weren't going to allow the exchange rate to float. They were going to keep it controlled. There were a lot of things that people were calling for that they did not want to risk and do. This government is different. So when I call out certain things for this government, I'm not saying that the PNM was better. The PNM was different, so you can't always compare them exactly. This government is doing things, but what it's doing, the PNM technically didn't do it, some of the things. What it is doing, though, it's displaying a degree of recklessness and thoughtlessness. No consideration for the long-term implications of some of the things they want to put in place, which is hilarious because a couple of them might come back and bite them in the rear end if they don't win the next election, because basically the PNM could say, well, you all did it to us, we could do it to you. You see that whole thing about Balsey House? Listen, I don't doubt that campaign financing is messy, lacks accountability, and needs to be cleaned up. But notice what the government is doing. They're not saying, let's strengthen the laws. They're just saying, we're going to investigate Balsey House. We're going to investigate our political opponents. If you're an objective person, that should look a little funny to you. If you're a biased person, well then, this part of the conversation, I guess, is just not for you, right? But whenever you have someone with a clear incentive, I need to ruin them because they're my opponent. Not, I need to actually seek the truth if there's any criminal matter under the surface. Yes, they'll have that on the surface, but the potential for conflict of interest is enough. Which is why you need to avoid certain things. Which is why Faris Awari's exclusion, his reclusion in certain issues wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough. Right? The government is doing certain things that leaves us having too many questions. And if and when they lose an election, it doesn't have to be the next one. Whatever they do to take advantage of the law to go after the PNM will potentially do right back at them. No one could make the claim that UNC financials are all above board and all transparent and there's nothing to see here. In fact, some of the dissonance was about that very same issue. So people might think, oh yes, they're going after them for balance out. That's fine. The UNC's campaign finances could be also a target. Also, this heavily implies that someone is applying a political agenda into police investigations. It doesn't have to be giving the police instructions. There are ways to manipulate a system without breaking the rules, just by the way. But it took the Democrats. The Republicans impeached Clinton back in what? In the late 90s? It took the Democrats something like 20 years, a little under 20 years, to do it back to the Republicans with Trump. Doesn't have to be right now. But make no mistake, things like that will come back to bite you in the you know what. And I always thought politicians operated in a way with the understanding that if they attack their opposition a certain way, the retaliation will come automatically back at them, so let's hold off from mutual assured destruction. But apparently that has gone out the window because politics has become too crazy. Because I believe that the politicians have successfully riled up their base so much with basically battle cries, calls to assemble for war. And the supporters have been so riled up because it's no longer an election now. It's no longer an election battleground. It's a battleground. We're 2 steps away from getting sticks and fighting in the streets, apparently. And when the supporters are this riled up, they're going to feed that energy back to the politicians. So now the politicians are acting as though this is not political debate. This is not a war of ideas. This is not to see who's better to run the country. This is a war of annihilation. And of course, the UNC has an extra incentive because they win less of the time. Well, historically, I wouldn't necessarily say so in recent history, but then again, the batting averages for every 2 PNM administrations, you get 1 UNC. But I don't know if they understand fully the implications of what they're doing. It's very short-sighted. And because of that, I can't have confidence that when they want to do things like put in police posts, they've rarely considered the long-term implications and how it fits within their long-term strategy, if they even have one. Because politically, that whole 10% thing with the PSA, they didn't think that through. If they did, it wouldn't be this messy. I'm just saying. If they did, their whole labor situation wouldn't be this messy. If they thought through their national security plans, the stand your ground legislation wouldn't fail so spectacularly. It failed, Minister. It failed. You could pretend otherwise. But that's you with your imaginary friends in your imaginary playing field. That's not me. All right, let's take a break. I don't know if Ashraf is here, but hopefully he will be, and we'll switch gears into other topics. Stay tuned. This is Talking About WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Your health matters, and the answers you need are just one conversation away. What's Up Doc is back for an exciting season 5, and we're bringing to you Trinidad and Tobago's leading medical professionals to discuss the issues that affect you and your family. From prevention and treatment to wellness and the latest medical technology. Get trusted advice, ask your questions, and stay informed. We also have an exciting new addition to the What's Up Doc family, our very own fitness instructor, Elena, who will provide easy, practical exercises you can implement in your daily routine. So don't miss What's Up Doc, Season 5, only on WESN, the content capital. Because when it comes to your health, knowledge is the best medicine.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
In this day of stay at home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
I'm back here and talking about another WSN Content Capital Show. Michael Small, joined once again as always. Every Friday we have our former acting ASP, soon to be retired, ticking down the months. Now I'm feeling it. Now I'm feeling it. Freedom. It's almost there, Ashraf. It's almost there for you, right? And when you're free, I don't even know if that'll really make much difference in your life, to be honest, being free or being on pre-retirement leave as it stands right now. But we will have probably some sort of congratulation, maybe a cupcake or two with a candle. But until then, welcome back to Talking Point.
Yeah, morning, Sean, and thanks for having me again. I mean, sometimes you just wonder if we just keep spinning something more than on a daily basis, because things just keep going in circles and circles and not at all. With that being said, one of the things that we are having on conversation online is that offline is the fact that we keep saying that there must be a level of accountability for actions taken by individuals. And this would come strictly the conversation we will have shortly with respect to the recent threats. Accountability. When persons feel comfortable making threats calling the police or calling the fire service or calling in somebody and nobody's held accountable for it, it becomes a normal practice.
So now, just to be clear, because I'm going to want to switch gears at a different angle soon. You're talking about the fact that people could call in and just randomly, people who are up to no good, and they want to say, yo, there's a bomb in this place or a bomb in that place or what have you, and we don't necessarily know if they have what the agenda is for doing so. But as at least one source in the police said, bomb threats potentially, usually, and in this case potentially, have been people up to mischief, not necessarily actually people planting bombs looking to cause murder and mayhem and the like. Is that correct?
Well, thus far, yes. And we have to make sure, we have to pray that all these threats, not because we really can't afford for one to be realistic and cause the chaos that we have. However, it's important to note that when these bomb threats are being made, now, if they came, all the reports indicated that the law enforcement personnel, the police and the fire received calls. My thing about it, if they receive calls through the 99 system, you're supposed to should have been able to identify who the callers are, because those things are not. This is not something. There are means to find out where the call originated from, and if it was a cell phone, who is the holder of the cell phone? If it was a landline, who is it registered to? We don't really have pay phones anymore, so obviously it's either one or the other. Right, so somebody should be held accountable and for making that.
I think there are a few payphones maybe kind of still surviving, but I would imagine, well, yeah, you might be able to trace the payphone, you might not be able to trace the speaker, but here's the funny part. 2026, I think the kind of people who would do these kind of things, they probably might not even realize payphones still exist in some limited areas.
So true. No, there's a lot persons don't understand with a bomb threat. Bomb threat is not only about the direct or the physical threat alone. The cost attached to it, the resources to be implemented, the measures needed. No, that takes away from your normal running of things to deal with specific things like that. And when you have bomb threats, at all a number of magistrate courts, which is very suspicious in my opinion.
Yes.
Because only recently there was an announcement that the court will be returning. You'll be returning back to court for in-person hearings. So no online, well, I shouldn't say all online, but they may have some online, depending on certain circumstances. But it begs the question whether or not if this was linked or not. Now, look at the other two locations, our shopping mall and Kent House. Let's be serious. Is that when you look at these locations, we have to determine whether or not the locations in question is such an easy target for individuals that persons could just go into there and plant a device if, as they allegedly claim that there's a device planted in the facility. Now, let's be real. Are we saying that all of our facilities, such facilities, are so soft target? No, I could understand them all. But there's some limit. There's a certain limit to where persons could get into the magistrate court and where the general public have access to. So all those things have to be considered whether or not.
Well, does that matter to the geographic locations of the magistrates' courts? Because I would imagine these are not the only magistrates' courts. So I don't know if the locations have anything to do with, because to me, I did wonder, you know, it's not as though there's a Port of Spain target, let's just say, or a Diego Martin target. Westmall wasn't mentioned, Val Park was. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Part of the mischief could be an anti-government person who, you know, wants to cause drama for the government and wants to target certain places that they might view as areas, well, Arima obviously not, but other areas, right, that might be more susceptible for certain things. Or maybe they're looking, oh, well, Arima, Superior, that's the two head honchos, I'll target that. My thing is this, I think you're correct with the magistrates' courts, but in my estimation, and one of the things that bothers me, is just how vulnerable so many public and major buildings are, right? And I'm not going to necessarily say why I say that, because that might be putting out too much information out, but just what I have, on my experience, I find that obviously magistrates courts, the Red House, those kind of areas, you know, at least certain police stations is different, but there's a lot of vulnerability if anyone actually wanted to do these things. So that's why I said, and you pointed out for now, bomb threats have been, we assume, mischief. Because if someone really wanted to do it, I don't think we're prepared to really guard against it. And it's hard. Even the best Western democracy with the best security, it's hard unless you really want to see what a state of emergency could look like at the extreme. It's really hard to prevent anyone looking to do something like this, right?
Now, if on the other side, there are some conspiracists who are saying that this is a precursor to another state of emergency, then let's look at it from this perspective. If it's a precursor, I'm not saying it is, but based on some of the conspiracy theorists out there and what they project, what some of the people in the public saying, well, hey, more threats again, we're going back and again an extension of state of emergency. I am simply saying that if this is it, then this is an indictment on the administration and law enforcement to effectively manage the state of emergency for persons to feel that, hey, listen, these are normal, this is normal, we can do these things normal and get away with it. Right? No, because of the state of emergency, I continue to say, because the state of emergency doesn't feel like a state of emergency, and persons are not have restrictions in the amount of movement and where they're going and how they're operating. Persons just doing what they're going about their business as normal and feels that, oh, listen, this doesn't have anything to do with me. Right? I am not, quote unquote, I am not part of the criminal element, but listen, the criminal element have the same, doing everything as normal as everybody else, committing no offense and coming back home as just like committing the offense anywhere they choose in Trinidad and Tobago, they leave to go and commit the offense and reaching back as normal. Right? So if it is, or let's hope it is not, because you don't want any one of these bomb threats to realistically be a reality. It can also be in reality something, because our mindset when it comes to disaster preparedness and how we treat with certain things like this, I mean, we might end up in a much more severe situation because we don't take things seriously. Now, a bomb threat is a serious thing. Whether you agree or disagree, whether it's mischief or otherwise, you must go through the protocol to ensure that it is not realistic. So just imagine the chaos law enforcement together with the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service had to go through to go to these locations, several locations, evacuate individuals, do the checks to ensure that, listen, the facilities are actually safe, right? And it is not a realistic threat. So you're upsetting the business of the facilities. You're upsetting the resources that you have, because you have to redeploy a lot of resources to deal with this. Then you have other things to look at. Do we really understand what it requires? Because the standard protocol for the minimum distance for a bomb, it didn't specifically say what type of bomb, because different type of devices, you have a different blast radius range. So we're not getting into that. I'm not talking about when a bomb trip.
Yeah.
Yes, standard is 300 feet from the facility, radius around the facility. When you look at our disaster preparedness models that we have, majority of our how we claim to have muster points is in close proximity. But when you have a bomb and you say evacuate a facility, you evacuating the facility at any particular location, so the muster point has some value in it, in terms of you're sending persons to the muster point to account for everybody, to ensure that everybody is accounted for. That is the purpose of the muster point. To account for all personnel, so you know that there's no one inside the facility that they didn't account for, or you can't account for, right? But with that being said, your muster point has to be within a particular distance, a minimum range of 300. When you look at our muster points, where our muster points located? Something right in the street, right outside on the right street opposite. Is muster point. Yeah. Opposite the same facilities that have been threatened.
Because in an attempt to explain it to the public, I mean, recently I just saw battlefield video from Ukraine where just anti-tank weapon, and those warheads are not that big. For people to understand, this is not Hollywood, where every little thing that looks like a missile, no matter how small, is going to have a gigantic explosion. However, the video pointed out the shock wave. Now, granted, it was also the vehicle potentially, whatever fuel and ammunition was exploding in the vehicle, but the shock wave, you saw a visible shock wave. And when you look at, I understand what you're saying, when you look at how close certain facilities have their muster points, a shock wave like that, which is potentially not from a large source, could potentially reach people. And the thing about explosives and explosions, which is where I really want you to weigh in so people can understand, it's similar to violent confrontations. You can't predict exactly where the shockwave is going to end and how much shrapnel it's going to be, and if the building would absorb the blast, or if the building would be turned into extra pieces of shrapnel that will fly out at near supersonic speeds, and what area is going to be outside of just get as far away as you can. You can't predict what's going to happen in proximity to the explosion. So it's just one of those things where as much precaution that you could reasonably take, you should, and which is why you bring up the fact that, hey, some of the protocols we have in place just doesn't account for this scenario. Is that correct?
Yes, so true. As well as when you talk about, so you have one aspect of the occupants of the facility who you have to deal with, but then you have the other thing where you have the traveling and traversing population that on the streets. So when you say 300 means that 300 meters away from the facility is not the occupants we're talking about. We're talking about our entire cordon around that entire facility where no one has access. That is a serious challenge to actually maintain, and that's just a minimum. Right. It can change dependent on the circumstance. If it is that the individual, the technicians go, the bomb technicians go in and actually identify a device. Let's say hypothetically somebody identified the device, then they would have to give the directive that, listen, the blast radius has to be removed, has to be expanded beyond that. It means that you're talking about additional resources to cordon one facility. Imagine getting calls of 11 different facilities across Trinidad and Tobago with that same type of resources that you're going to use. That is a lot of resources. So, so you see, when you look at the impact alone, the impact is not. When I talk about the impact, I'm not talking about the actual physical impact. I'm talking about all the contingencies and everything you had to put in place to contain this. And containment is all you're going to do, because you may not have control of the what is taking place. So you have to contain as best and reduce and mitigate the amount of damages and injuries that can be sustained by the population. So that is why I'm saying a bomb threat, Sean, is such a significant, is a serious threat, in my opinion, that it not only threatens one direct, but it causes a lot of more rippling effects along a resource line. So that is why accountability, and somebody has to be answerable or be charged or be held accountable for putting this amount of resources on high alert, and in some aspects of it, wasting of the resources when it can be utilized to do something else, But when no one is being held accountable, nobody is being charged, then it can happen again.
Well, it can happen again. So there's an aspect of that I want to get into after this, because I want to address what I have as the lower third right now for this segment, because this was my genuine initial response to it, while saying that yes, and I agree with you, with a bomb threat, you have to respond, whether you believe it or not. Once it is not blatantly obvious to be a hoax, you have to respond. And even then, I hesitate to say blatantly obvious, because what is the threshold to prove that, right? The severity of it means you have to respond. As you pointed out, how come no one ever gets held accountable for these kinds of things in order to ensure it doesn't happen in the future? And there's consequences for that down the line. But let me just stick to that main point there. When there's no one being held accountable, now the public is freer to say, is it really a bomb threat? And the whole situation about, is this an attempt to say, look, there's another threat, so we need to continue the SOE. However, we have to renew it, we have to stop it and then restart it, whatever. We have to continue the SOE because, look, the threats, the major threats to the country is still happening. Don't mind the SOE is working, right? Don't mind the SOE is working. But apparently, there have been more threats, more credible threats against the Prime Minister's life and bombing of state facilities than ever before. So we have to have the SOE, which is working to keep down crime, but these threats keep going to ensure that these threats don't happen, right? And given the fact that all we have is, well, threats happened, and no one is being held accountable. So we don't know if these threats are credible or not. We don't know how to assess them. We do know the SOE is coming to an end. And I think for the public, they're going to have one or two responses. One, it's to justify continuing the SOE in some shape or form. Or two, this is the other plausible response by the public. This is a cry wolf situation, where we have basically been told from almost the beginning, I think like month 3 or month 2 of this administration coming into place. I could be wrong on the math. It might have been June or July, I can't remember which, so it might be month 3 or month 4. There have been so many claims by the government of these existential crisis of threats against the lives of MPs and magistrates and judges and whoever else, and the Prime Minister. And now there's bomb threats that, dare I say, the government runs the risk, and some of these threats might be credible, like the bomb threats. This might be completely someone up to no good, nothing to do with the government, nothing to do with the state agency. The problem is, you run the risk of the public just not believing in threats anymore. And when you want to cordon off, 5 city blocks because you have to safeguard the people from not driving past what might be a building with a bomb, you end up now having an irate public that is unwilling to understand, because there's a threat every other month. What do you mean there's another threat? How is the public going to continue to believe a government that has a working SOE when there's always all these threats, and yet no one is ever held accountable for these threats except a 69-year-old woman? Right? That's the only threat against the government that we know for sure we've seen accountability for. A 69-year-old woman with chest pains that can't sleep and lost 29 pounds. That's the only one. So, I mean, you understand what I'm saying? This cry wolf scenario where they keep saying threat.
And I said it from the beginning that if you don't address these type of things, persons become comfortable doing it. Yeah, and I agree with you. It appears it from the public perspective, it's cry wolf, right? And you're not cry wolf with in one side of it, and on the other side, you're not seeing the level of urgency or the level of measures that could equate the type of threats that we're talking about. So if it's a threat against state, then Trinidad and Tobago should have been on a high alert. You can't tell me you're on high alert for bomb threats to the magistrate court. All of a sudden, everybody on high alert. High alert for what? When you're talking about previously, we had there was not on high alert when the state apparatus and high officials were threatened were threatened. But now we're talking about high alert because we have bomb threats. Yes, I understand how serious bomb threats are, but when you take one to the other, then nothing is coming out. You're not hearing anything from it. And yet we're coming to the end of this SUE period, and we're going to another, and we have when it ends, another debate. If it have an extension, let's say if it have an extension, is there going to be anything different that the administration is doing? And I'm not talking about the government alone. Yeah. I'm talking about the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Well, question.
And law enforcement.
They've detained a whole new round of people this past weekend. To me, that might not necessarily is, but might be a sign that they are looking to keep this thing going.
But detaining persons is one. What is the outcome? Let's be realistic. What is the outcome? The situation with the Sabras is a clear example as to what is taking place. Yes, we're talking about detention, but they also got the opportunity, and the court saw it fit to have house arrest. Could those other individuals be placed under house arrest because precedent was set for one set of individuals for house arrest based on circumstances? Could house arrest be something for the other individuals? Is the state able to maintain house arrest maintain the sanctity of the procedure and protocol for house arrest going forward? You just can't be detaining individuals and saying, okay, well, we detaining individuals and we decide to charge anybody else as yet because you're not PDO. And something is not adding up, is not realistic in what is taking place. I am listening to somebody commentary where it was reported in one media house that the state denied the individual opportunity to seek medical attention and have a consultation with the doctors. Only to read in another article where the individual's own lawyers are saying that didn't happen. So is misinformation part and parcel of this whole scenario now? One is denying, and the one is one saying he never talked to the media. So then, where the media getting that information from?
Well,
who is sharing that information? And here the irony behind it. You are saying certain things, but the person is under house arrest, and part of the arrangement is they cannot communicate with anybody other than. And there's specific guidance as to who they could communicate with and how they can communicate with those individuals to get permission. So then, how is the information? So then, how you're reporting certain things, and now the lawyers have to counter that and say, no, that didn't happen.
The thing is, the Hadid's case...
So it begs another question. More questions than answers.
The Hadid's case answers some of the questions you had a few minutes ago, and that the minister basically said, well, it's too much to try to have them under house arrest, so we're gonna skip that step and just outright release them from being detained. So Staba was kept under house arrest, but they were, as far as I'm aware, they're not even under house arrest, which then widens the scope of the questions about other detainees. and the inconsistency in treatment, and even the inconsistency in handling the two Hadids, Dominic and Genevieve, they were fighting to go home under house arrest, and they were just released because the Privy Council would have taken too long, according to the minister. It's very weird. But I have another scenario to present to you, because this is also some part of my initial reaction. And this very much is important when you say, when people are not held accountable for making bomb threats, they are free, or they feel free to do it again. There's no consequence for doing it. And they're supposed to be, because you are mobilizing emergency resources in a way that could be dangerous. And this is one of the things, is that it could distract these resources that might be needed somewhere else. Which leads me to this point. I wondered, every time there's a bomb threat, I do wonder if part of the mischief is not just mischief, but it's to actually gauge the national security response. Hey, we threatened here with a bomb, what did they do? We threatened there with a bomb, what did they do? Potentially looking to extract information from the scenario. And then more importantly, as I pointed out, you have a bomb threat, the state responds, resources goes there. That means those resources aren't available for elsewhere. It technically is a Hollywood plot, but you can potentially see, because these are concerns like when you have the Independence Day parade, you have to commit resources to that. People just to march in the parade, resources that are not available elsewhere. At some point, people up to no good might think, hey, we could use this as a distraction, as a diversion. Or we could get the states complacent on responding to these things, and then potentially once everyone starts to take it for granted that it's a hoax, maybe actually do the thing. So this is one of the, it all stems from what you said. If people could make these accusations, these threats, and you can't get them, arrest them, and hold them accountable, then people could play games with just making bomb threats willy-nilly. And the thing is, I say games, but it could go into some very nefarious and dark scenarios very quickly by just having that first misstep that you pointed out. Do you agree?
Yes, it is. It is. And so that is the biggest risk you take with these calls. There's no way that you can judge the credibility of the call. You have to take it as it is. It's a bomb threat. Procedures have to be adopted and must execute all the procedures that is necessary to mitigate against a potential bomb threat until such time as the area is deemed safe. The threat still exists. And that means a lot of resources that has to be put in place. You cannot take them for granted. So if you're getting like this, you got bomb threats for about 11 different locations, and significant locations, I might add. You have to take it serious enough. So it means now, I expect that as we go into open of the magistrate court, where we have in-person matters now, that I expect security measures would be beefed up. And additional security measures will be put in place, because the potential of, because just before we have bomb threats, so then you have to mitigate against this possibility and increase your security measures. Now, you can't increase the security measures for a facility such as a mall. I mean, that's open public space.
Yeah.
So the risk will always be there. But for facilities that you have some control over, you have to put some additional measures in place. Now, persons do in fact try to test the response of police officers. So it's not a bomb threat alone. They may make a false report about some incident, and when you reach here, there's nothing happening, so they want to find out. So we have, just an example, there have been multiple times that you report, persons will call and say that they heard gunshots in a particular area, right? police responded. And when police respond, because of gunshots, there's nothing in the area. None of the residents, when I interview the residents, some of the residents say that they never heard anything, never heard any gunshots in the area, some legitimate, some otherwise. But that is also a means of testing the response of police and how fast police officers can, and the amount of vehicles coming in that area. So, you know, and also where they come from. So there's a lot of things that they test law enforcement from when it comes to response. So you have to be cognizant of that. This bomb threat also is a possibility of persons being mischievous in one, but on the other hand, you can't put it aside that they are not also testing the resource capabilities of the police and fire service when it comes to that, and the measures they put in place or have to put in place.
I think one of the things too is we haven't had a major arms cache retrieval. So we don't know, because the last big one, which was a few years ago when they had the high-powered rifles, that scared me. The implications of that scared me. And potentially the Americans are keeping certain things suppressed, right? We don't know, as members of the public, to what degree explosives, we know guns come in, we know drugs come in. I guess we assume explosives can come in, but we have no idea, which is dangerous on two levels. One, it's a lot easier to think it's fake and it's a cry wolf situation and we just downplay it and we disregard it, right? But then the other one is we have no idea how bad it could get. And we don't know, it can be there, ready to hit us, and we just won't be prepared. And God is a Trinity, but we inflict our harm on ourselves, which is why on some level things like this, I guess the whole idea with security is you kind of want to nip things in the bud before you reach the point where it's an actual immediate danger, right? Because there's always risks that you can't stop it. But if you nip it in the bud, if the person calls in and you arrest them one time so they know, hey, we can't test these things. We can't try to fake these things. We can't try to lead law enforcement, somebody knows. Because if it gets to the point where it potentially could happen, now it's a race against the clock to try to figure out a way to block it. And then, of course, as you alluded to earlier on, let's say an attack like this happens, how capable would be our ability to respond to a successful bomb attack with regards to our medical services and of course, on some level, you know, responding to a building that's been bombed has a certain degree of danger in and of itself. You might want to try to rescue people, but then, you know, depending on who taught these guys, if there are guys that are credible threats to do this, there are risks associated with these kinds of scenarios that I don't necessarily want to spell out right now.
It shows that we need to, these things highlight the need to evolve in our thinking about these things cannot happen. And preparation, training, proper resource management in resource management in terms of, because when I listened to I read the article, one of the articles in the newspaper, the fire service made a statement about the lack of personnel trained to deal with it, because some of them retired and all that, and those are realities we're talking about. Because as persons, these are specialized trained individuals. It's not the average police or fire officer. They are specifically trained to deal with this. It's a high risk training they go to, and they are specialized. So not everyone in the police service will be trained in this or the fire service. Yes, you will have a general understanding of the procedures to follow, because you would be able to assist the trained technicians, because you know they are coming to do something specific. Your support mechanism, so you follow the procedure, what to do if you are a first responder aid. Right. So yes, you have to have a level of training, but let's be realistic. When you have a small group of individuals who are trained in this, they are not able to effectively manage or address such a situation where you have 11, and I'm just using the last rate, so just bomb threats, alleged bomb threats for 11 locations. It is not easy it's not going to be realistic that this small group of individuals could cover these 11 or reach those 11 locations and make those areas safe enough or safe or clear them, right? So these are some of the risks you take. But we talk about training of individuals, and this is why I keep saying they need to have persons accountable, because the type of resources and the time and effort, wastage of the manpower resources that you have when it is type of thing, because you have to go through a particular protocol. It's a very meticulous protocol that you have to follow. So we're doing it. Persons are doing it. They have not been held. They've not been held accountable thus far, and they're going to continue because we're not taking it as serious enough. And I am hopeful that somebody will be held accountable for the 11, because it puts some mindset in individuals perspective also, because imagine persons don't want to go to court now because they're saying, listen, at any point in time you have bomb threats. There is a possibility that we know that we always get some threats as school opens. You're going to get bomb threats in schools, right? Somebody going to call us in school and say, hey, you have a bomb threat, because why? Some mischievous individuals don't want to, decide to call the school because there is no accountability, and they know for a fact that when they call school, everybody had to evacuate the school, and just they go back in as normal because, hey, you upset the run and the day.
So it just coincides almost. I don't think the timing is quite this interesting, but I believe it was last week. I'm not sure exactly when he came back. He said August the 10th. He got emergency leave from the 13th to the 19th. So it's literally like just before or the day of the bomb threats, the commissioner was not in the country. I don't expect that to necessarily be connected. The timing could have been rather unfortunate. Do you have any insight with regards to the commissioners leaving? Because I do find it strange. I cannot think of any situation, and I am a layman, so I am a third party to all of this. I don't have enough information. But there's nothing that I could have brought to mind to say, why does the commissioner have to leave? Why couldn't someone else have gone to address whatever it was?
And that is the speculation a lot of persons are saying. We do not know the circumstance. It is called emergency leave because there can be several emergencies or several situations that fall in the category of emergency that the commissioner had to address. It does not have to be work emergency. It could have been something private.
He did say that it was based on intelligence. He did say based on intelligence.
I'm just...
Okay.
Right, so what I'm saying, I'm just going across on the basis of why you could get emergency. So it could be private, you put some personal issue. Yes, he did it, and on this occasion, he said that he got, he had intelligence. He got intelligence. The intelligence could suggest what? It could have been something, the intelligence could have been led something personal. Remember, there was also a threat on the commissioner's children's life, right? So we can speculate, but we would not know the specific type of threat because it would be personal to him and it was under confidentiality. And he followed the procedure and the procedure adopted by all officers within the police service. From commissioner come down, you have to make put your document, apply for emergency and state the circumstances why I need emergency. He did in fact do all of that. The thing about it is that we fail to realize that the Trinidad Police Service can function and is capable of functioning without the commissioner physically in any country or at the helm at that point in time. All the functions are the way the service is structured. All administrative function, operational functions can happen. There are certain things that there needs a commissioner for, and that is specific, some specific areas, and I won't mention those areas.
Right.
Where you need the commissioner for, right? That is where an acting appointment will be made, and based on our constitutional framework, someone has to be. They have to send a document. The Police Service Commission has to send a document to Parliament indicating that the absence of the commissioner, and this is the next person in line who they choose to act as commissioner. Now, in the normal running of things in the police service, there's seniority in service. So Mr. Benjamin would have been the most senior assistant. He's the most senior ACP in the police service, and in that capacity, he's a senior assistant commissioner. However, there were 3 deputy commissioners of police confirmed. There's no seniority anymore. The 3 of them are deputy commissioners of police. One is not senior than the other.
Oh,
unless the appointments come different days, and the appointment did come in fact in different days.
Right.
So when it comes to when persons say we have 3 deputy commissioners, I'm explaining, I'm breaking it down to show that how that seniority became part and parcel of the deputy commissioners. If you are appointed today, you have, and somebody is appointed tomorrow, I have seniority over you because of the fact that I was appointed one day before you. That is how seniority operates. So he was appointed confirmed to the rank of deputy commissioner prior to the other 2 deputy commissioners. So he is automatically the most senior individual. In the absence of the commissioner, he assumes that role as the most senior police officer to lead the organization. However, the Police Service Commission can make a decision as to which one of the commissioners they would appoint the deputy commissioners to act commissioner. It is not automatic.
Well, but when you say to act, is it to act as commissioner or given the title of acting commissioner? Because I do believe.
No.
Right.
When you are acting as a commissioner, you have to get your letter of appointment. You will be given the specific time period and in which your you will be acting as a commissioner of police. So he would have got a document from.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Apparently, I believe when Gary Griffith's contract was up and they were attempting to put things in place for him to act as commissioner, there was a court decision that basically a judge said, no, Parliament has to select the acting commissioner, right? So I'm not entirely sure. I believe that's when that happened. I'm not entirely sure if it still stands. I don't know if it was challenged or what have you, right? Because the whole thing with Gary as commissioner fell apart for other reasons. But potentially, the Police Service Commission might not have had the capacity now to just appoint somebody without Parliament approval, right? So I'm not entirely sure what the process is. And
the difference, there was a slight difference in when Gary Griffith was Commissioner of Police. He was not a servant member of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, so he did not have seniority coming through the ranks.
Right.
Right. So when he was appointed as commissioner, he was appointed to that position. So you can't be appointed. Your contract was for a commissioner. Your contract would not have been for an acting commissioner. So that was a unique situation that had to make the necessary adjustments for that purpose.
Okay.
In this scenario, the commissioner was out of the jurisdiction. We have three serving members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service who are deputy commissioners of police. They already have seniority assigned to them. In the context that they came through the ranks of the organization, so their seniorities, they will have their seniorities based on before they reach the rank of deputy commissioner of police. When they were appointed deputy commissioner of police, their seniority changed in terms of who was appointed first by service commission and who was recommended first by service commission. Be correct. Who was recommended first by service commission and who Parliament confirmed. So Parliament would have said, Mr. Benjamin got his first appointment. Second was Deputy Commissioner George, and then finally the last person was Deputy Commissioner Martin, Suzette Martin. So you have seniority like that. So Benjamin, George, Martin. Those are the three persons who, in terms of seniority. Mr. Benjamin is the senior person. Benjamin did in fact act commissioner of police because of his seniority at the same time when he was under when he held the commissioners, because he was the most senior deputy commissioner of police.
Yes.
When he
was arrested.
When he was at the deputy commissioner, he acted commissioner of police. So it's an easy transition to commissioner of police. No. When a commissioner is not around, the senior person acts not as confirmed, but takes, let's put it this way, assume the role of commissioner of police. That's the correct terminology. You assume the role of the most senior person in the organization and takes the help. So he assumed that role one time because it falls to him as the most senior. That is now, based on that, service commission will send the relevant documentation to Parliament to confirm that individual, confirm or choose someone else. Remember, Service Commission can in fact recommend someone else, not because you have the seniority, it was automatic. But for holding the position, he held the position or still in that position until Service Commission sends to Parliament who they believe is the best person to hold that position in as the commissioner in the absence of the commissioner of police.
Well,
document was sent. There will always be a delay. There will always be a small delay, a delay of a day or two for that to happen. Right?
So
and
the thing is,
like I said, there are specific things that you need to appoint a commissioner to do.
I guess I don't know how this works. The practicality, Parliament being on recess, usually during July to the first week in September. I do wonder if there were certain hiccups as well with regards to that part of the process where if the Service Commission has to inform Parliament, is enough to inform the workers of Parliament, if anyone is still there to take messages, for lack of a better way to put it, or if you have to formally inform the legislative body made up of the legislatures, which is what I imagine it's supposed to be. So it was a tricky situation. I guess the long and short is, because as we're out of time, this was a situation with a lot of procedural issues, because I could speculate on the decisions being made, but I think that's a little bit too nitpicky on how this thing was unfolded. My real issue was the fact that I believe it would have looked better and come across better if the government communicated to the public, hey, the commissioner had something to do, he'll be gone for 5 days, it's fine. And if they said that up front, as opposed to now, after the fact, having to explain his absence. And which is ironic because it's literally he came back just before we had multiple bomb threats around the country.
This is where the issue of communication comes in. Who's responsible for communicating that information? Is it the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service?
Good point.
Communication. Is it that we're going to communicate where the commissioner? Because the commissioner, the parliament doesn't have to give an explanation as to the commissioner's whereabouts, in my opinion.
Right.
It's an independent body. So if the commissioner is out of jurisdiction, someone within the organization says, say the commissioner is out of jurisdiction on a private X, Y, and Z, right? On emergency leave, as the case may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
X, Y, and Z will be holding the position. Is assuming the role of commissioner, the most senior person, right? Assuming the role pending the approval by the service commission, which normally service commission would adhere to that because they would follow the rules and the rules also. It's about communication, and when you don't communicate this type of information, because we're in a state of emergency, the head of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is going on emergency leave with a lot of speculation of why and what's the reason and all of that. When it could have been dealt with very simple. It's emergency leave, whether personal or otherwise. I mean, he's entitled to his personal leave because of if it's something private. Let's be real. I mean, I'm just throwing it out. If it's a medical emergency with either him or his family, come on, is that information in the public domain? At least you have to respect some sort of privacy for an individual, not because you're in the public space.
Yeah.
Every single thing is supposed to be, the public has to question every single thing that I do, right? So it's about how the information was communicated. I think we keep coming back to how the information is poorly communicated, and we keep asking who should be communicating this information, and you're blaming the government. But for me, this is my take on it. The organization should have been in a state of emergency, and if the commissioner has to leave has to go on emergency leave once it is approved, and only when it is approved, not prior to that. Only when it is approved and he's leaving the jurisdiction, you inform so on. So it is, and the next person in line would have been assuming responsibility. So thus far, the organization is structured in a manner that it can continue to function. If the emergency leave has to be extended for a greater period of time based on whatever situation, then I would say that the parliament, the government, right, and to the extent the Minister of Homeland Security would in fact give an explanation as to why we have the current and what is the situation with the Commissioner of Police, because at the end of the day, is the Commissioner of Police of Trinidad and Tobago. All right, whether we agree with it, whether we agree or disagree or what, it's something that we have to understand that, listen, high official persons in such a high office absent for a period of time for whatever reason is of public concern.
Now, we have to wrap up the show. We do have, of course, Andy Johnson coming up at 10 a.m. with 10 questions. So just before we do that, we have some comments to get to from yesterday. So if we could just put them up to acknowledge them. So this is someone pushing back against some of the, I guess you could say, anti-Israel. I don't want to say anti-Semitic. It's not always anti-Semitic, but some of the anti-Israel sentiments or anti-Israel with regards to the war sentiments. Israel must be allowed to protect itself from all external attacks. What genocide in Gaza? There are 2 million Palestinians living happily in Israel. I haven't looked into the last part to know how true it is. I do believe that there are Arabs living in Israel. From what I understand, Muslims are living in Israel. The thing is, and again, we spoke about it, I wouldn't call it genocide. Because just because it's bad, we want to use the worst term possible. Someone seems bad, so we call him Hitler. It's like, no, he's not Hitler. Right? Trump isn't Hitler. That will dilute the meaning of the word. But it doesn't mean that it's good just because we're saying it's not genocide. And also, must they be allowed to protect themselves? Sure, but we can't debate the manner of which they are apparently attempting to protect themselves. And this is where the arguments gets, I think you're trying to pull, on whether you intend to or not, the commenter is attempting to pull the debate into one of more of semantics and actually, well, what is the practical reality on the ground?
So I would just use an analogy for this one. It falls into our conversation that we have when it comes to stand your ground. What is self-defense?
Exactly.
To what extent can you go to protect yourself? And from realistically, what extent? I understand, and this is not as normal. This is not it is not so simply expressed to stand your ground, but it's a foundation it could start on. I understand what the caller is good, but let's be realistic. Everybody has a personal perspective as to what is taking place internationally and how they view things, because they're viewing it from different perspectives and different viewpoints and different probably religious and everything else background. Now, I cannot say it's not genocide. I cannot say it is genocide. I am not on the ground because you don't have much. You're getting one-sided information on the ground, but it is extremely bad. Let's be real. It is extremely bad when you see this type of destruction. And I can't say, and I'm saying this: defending yourself does not mean defending yourself for the next 5 years because somebody attacked your house yesterday. And for the next 5 years, I want to completely annihilate or destroy you. What is happening across there is out of context. We're not talking about displacement of individuals. We're talking about thousands of lives being lost. We're talking about land being taken away. Right? Persons are being moved and forcefully being moved from one end to the other and being attacked at the same time. What is that?
Yeah.
If that is not part and parcel of how you could categorize genocide in it, well,
again,
I would say it's a very bad situation, but you can't fully put it into the genocide because it may not fit the criteria for genocide, but it is. But I think it is very, very bad. It is extremely bad.
I use the analogy that my issue with the overuse of the word terrorism. Just because it's a mass casualty situation that causes widespread fear doesn't necessarily make it terrorism. If there's a political agenda, the problem is the label that they use to describe attacks in order to coerce a government to change its policy by causing fear in the population. People then think it's applied more widespread than it actually is. Genocide was a specific term for a specific thing. I think if we need to, this might, because this could be repeated, just by the way, right? And it's technically not genocide, but it might deserve its own term to properly encapsulate what it is. And let's take the flyer, because now here's the thing, because this flyer points out, right? The country, the amount of destruction, and the fact that the population has been displaced, as you pointed out, Ashraf. The one thing that I'll push back is with regards to the casualty figures. You got to be really careful about that. I have never once, I believe, taken stock in casualty figures as a definitive measure, whether it's the war in Ukraine, the situation in Gaza, or so forth, because we know these things are very difficult to get completely accurate. So that's the one thing, because especially the casualty figures is where things get very emotional. We do know, however, it has been conceded that the casualty figures are about 70,000 Palestinians killed, of which only 1/3, about 20,000 or so, are technically members of Hamas and combatants. Some might say that's a historically good ratio. I can't really be comfortable saying that, to be honest. But the problem with things like this, technically, no, that's not what you call genocide. Because it actually doesn't say what the total casualty figures are. So the casualty figures could be 2, one of which could be a child, and everything about that will technically still be accurate. Genocide has nothing to do with the countries physically being destroyed or the population being displaced. In a way, that's a different crime, right? And if we just, it's similar to the bomb threat things. You run the risk, if everything is a genocide, then nothing will be a genocide. And then it could happen again under our very noses, and we'll be, happily singing Kumbaya, because we're not going to respond to actual genocides properly. This needs its own type of understanding and response. Whatever this thing is, as I said, somebody needs to send military forces separated too. No one's willing to do that. What else could I say? We have one last comment. Let's take, now that you've hosted a guest that gives the Zionist perspective, I look forward to you hosting a guest that gives the Palestinian perspective and keeping with good journalism. Here's the problem. Technically speaking, the Zionist perspective reached out to me. I'm not going to take credit for finding him. But he was willing to have a conversation, and I was willing to have it. I am willing to have conversations with the government, with the opposition, with anybody. I honestly don't know who in TNT could give a professional perspective, because at the very least he gave an academic one. That was his academic background, the speaker yesterday. So if you have a suggestion, that's fine. If anyone wants to reach out, that's fine. But I'm not just going to take some random person, right, that doesn't have the requisite background in the situation to give a perspective, because it's not going to be it's not going to have equal weight. And it is what it is. And yes, I understand I run the risk of appearing biased, but I literally cannot manufacture someone out of thin air. Now, maybe I've missed someone, maybe someone's been in the press or been in social media, and I haven't been aware. I did participate with an interview with a Palestinian advocate some time ago. So in the long run, technically, it wasn't on Talking Point. It was on AM Prime. You could probably find the interview in our back catalog on social media, right? So I have done technically both perspectives, just not on Talking Point and not recently. That person is a foreigner. He's not necessarily, we might be able to, maybe we could bring him back, but he's not necessarily somebody who is going to be as readily available as someone local to give a local perspective on this issue. All right, with that said, we have 10 questions coming next. Ashraf, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Just with the lag, it was kind of funny. It was almost like if you were looking at me deadpan. Yeah. It was a good comedic moment. Thanks for joining me once again. Hopefully the days of Zoom will be over, because we're at the mercy of latency, at times when we do it via Zoom. But, you're a busy man, so we still appreciate you giving us your over an hour of your time in the morning, early morning. All right.
Thanks very much, Sean. See you next week. And let's hope that persons in Trinidad and Tobago take these type of things, bomb threats, and seriously enough, because at the end of the day, we really don't want it to be a reality that we may face. We know what an explosion in other countries does and how it impacts a lot of persons. We don't want these type of things coming home to us, right? It's not something that we really want to hear about.
Folks, thanks to Ashraf once again. Thanks to the commenters. Some today, some from yesterday. Just needed to ensure that they did not go ignored. So with that said, 10 questions with Andy Johnson at 10 a.m. coming up next. Don't miss it. Always having some of the most interesting interviews that you did not know you needed until you see him conduct them. Until then, we'll see you next week. Stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Don't forget, it's nice to be nice. 10 questions is next. Bye-bye.
WESN.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices. or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.